views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to Radically Distinct Radio. I'm your host, Jenn Morgan, coming to you from Studio 212 at the Soundcasting Network in South Lake Union neighborhood of Seattle, Washington. Last couple weeks, we've been talking about self-worth and being radically distinct. And last week, I had you download the RAD chart so you could take a look at where do you fit in your perception of yourself and how you show up in the world. You know, do you perceive yourself as radically distinct, or do you perceive yourself as copying, like me too, I'm going to be like everyone else? Or do you perceive yourself as like an imposter where you have a really good, strong sense of who you are, but you're not really getting the results that you want? Or are you feeling really withdrawn and in the dodo bird box where you're feeling like, you know what, I don't really care about showing up in the world? So that's what we did last week. And if you want, you can still get that chart if you want. All you have to do is to join my text club. The number is 31996, and you just need to put the code RAD in the message box with the numbers 31996. That's who you text. Okay. So today we're going to talk about something, the next step forward. We're going to talk about perception is reality, and how your perception affects your ability to how what you think, feel, and believe, which is your perception, how that affects how you show up in the world. When I do this talk, I have a picture of a little kitty cat looking in a mirror and reflecting back to the kitty cat as this giant lion. And I like this image a lot because it gives a very good example of what it means to perceive who you are. So you might be a little itty bitty kitten, but you think of yourself as a giant lion. So the way you show up in the world is quite ferocious, and it might look a little ridiculous to other people. Or like, look at that little kitten strutting around like it's a lion, you know? So some people have that level of confidence, and sometimes I've been told that I have that level of like bigger confidence than maybe is called for, you know? So that's perception. And it's often said perception is reality. And I want to tell you a little bit about what that means to me. About 5 or 6 years ago, I had decided I wanted to become a speaker and teach people about some things that I knew about how to produce the results that you want, and specifically how to do that on brand. And I am not kidding you. I got on stage. It was, just 5 or 6 years ago. I'd get on stage and I could not remember my name. I would just blank completely out. And, I remember I was in this one speaking program, and the instructor, I had been going down to California to go to the speaking program. It's been over a month already. And I raised my hand and he's like, "Who are you? I've never even seen you before." And he made me come on stage. I couldn't remember my name. I'm not kidding you, but I could dance. Like I could move because I was comfortable doing that, I guess. Anyways, so long story short, I was at another one of these trainings, and there was a guest speaker, and the guest speaker came in, and she was very inspirational. I was really inspired by her as a speaker. And I was like, you know what? I bet I could help her with branding. Wouldn't that be cool if she would want to work with me, because she's really cool and inspiring, and I do great branding work. So I went over, talked to her, gave her my card, and she basically blew me off. I mean, in so many words. And I don't take no for an answer. So I'm persisting that she, listen to me. And eventually she just looks at me and says, "I would never hire you or introduce you to my friends. Your branding's kind of like white trashy." And what went through my head in that moment, I'll tell you exactly what went right through my head in that moment. I thought, white trash? I mean, I know people in my family. There's some, that maybe people in the world would look at that way. I'm not ashamed of my family. But my branding being white trash? Well, I mean, no. Actually, my branding's really well thought out. In fact, if you were going to hire me to take a picture of that girl on that rocket, that same picture, you'd be about $60,000. And we had that costume made. We built that rocket. The concept for the rocket, we probably spent about 2 months developing that idea. And if you maybe you think that it's not showing a woman in a great light. Well, if you the picture that I originally had drawn was, I had just started coaching people in this program that I had been taking, and I was just working on a vision for them that I wanted to turn into like my branding. So I had this picture of a doll of some sort, just like a stick figure with a backpack, and on the back of the backpack was a rocket. And that was the feeling that I felt that I gave my clients, because I was helping them actually get into action around their ideas. And so working with me was going to be like putting a rocket on your backpack, right? That was where I had concepted it. So I took it to my business partner at the time, and he did some research on that kind of an imagery, and he came back with, 6 or 7 pictures of women sitting on rockets like bimbos with their legs up in the air. Like, if you just imagine trying to balance on a rocket while it's moving, while you're balancing it on your tailbone with your feet up in the air, it's ridiculous. I mean, come on, you're going to fall off of the rocket. It's, the dumbest thing I ever saw. And so I'm like, the only way we're putting a woman on a rocket is if she's riding it like it's a crotch rocket. She's an empowered motorcycle rider, but she's not riding a motorcycle. She's riding a rocket. And then that was like the concept, right? Because it had my actual point of view being a woman about what, if we're going to show a woman on a rocket, she's going to be an empowered woman on a rocket. Well, anyways, we go through, we have a costume designer. Actually, the costume designer designs costumes for Disney. And we had a model come, and we looked at a bunch of different people, because that's not me on the rocket. And so we actually put this thing together, and we look at it at the end. And I'm not going to lie, it does look like it's a very phallic shape, and it is a very provocative pose. But it also was a very empowering place to be like, no, this is exactly the feeling that we're owning everything about who I am, Jenn Morgan, as a consultant. Anyways, that's what went through my head when she told me that my branding was white trash. And I know that my branding is not white trash, that in fact it was justified, all the decisions that I made, and that I was intentional about what it was that I created. And if she was to look at my branding, you know what that means? I mean, if she was to look at it and have that opinion, what that means is she doesn't know very much about branding, and boy, does she need my help. Right? Not, oh my gosh, I can't believe you so-and-so and so-and-so, you just disrespected me. No, instead, you need to hire me. And she did. And I made that woman, I doubled her sales conversion rate. And she made $2 million the first week, and that she launched her new program because I was her strategist. That's what it means. Perception is reality. I created the reality where a woman who basically insulted me became my client. How does a person come from that perspective when other people are not understanding them, and maybe as disrespecting them, telling them they're someone that they're not? Like when we're talking about the ugly duckling, right? When you're a little kid, it's hard to be like, no, I'm not a duckling, I'm a swan. But as an adult, you absolutely can, and you can empower your children too. You have to have some words, but you also have to come from a place of believing in yourself as the number one. What does that mean? That's what we're going to talk about today. Knowing yourself as the number one. This is I guess this is a lesson. Yeah, this is a lesson that I derived from sacred geometry, and it will help you to create better, more effective relationships in your life, right? To understand yourself as the number one is to be able to be a better communicator with other people about who you are, what you have to offer. And that is really the foundation of a good relationship. Without that, it's hard to form effective relationships. So I want you to imagine yourself as a hula hoop. Okay, a hula hoop is a circle, right? And it's actually three-dimensional. It's not a flat circle that you draw on a chalkboard. It's a three-dimensional circle that you can bring it around your hips, right? It can go around your hips. You can spin it so that it makes a ball. You know, if you put the edge right on the ground and then you spin it independent of you, you can see from the swirls, you can see it making a complete ball, right? So it has dimension. So you're a hula hoop, and it's a closed circle. Now, what a lot of people do is they get to this point in their life where they feel that they're missing something or missing someone. Something isn't quite right. And so they go and look for something to fill this hole that they think they have in themselves, right? If I ever only had this, then I could be happy with myself. If only I was like this, then I could be happy with myself. If only I was in this relationship, right? We take this, our self-worth, and we see ourselves as lacking something, and then we go try to find something to fill a hole, and like attracts like, right? So if we go out into the world and we're looking for a person to fulfill this hole that we think is empty, what we're doing is we're trying to take a hula hoop that is essentially not a full circle, right? It's like broken. Have you ever tried to have like a hula hoop that was broken on one side? It doesn't really spin around your hips. It's kind of awkward. And then if you go out and find another hula hoop that it also has that hole missing, and then you join them together, what you end up with is a peanut. I hope this is making sense to you, because I don't have any diagrams to show you or anything. But if you just imagine a hula hoop with a big hole missing out of it, going and meeting another hula hoop with a big giant hole in it, and they come together and they form a peanut. Now, you'll have a very, very hard time getting this peanut to circle around your hips like a hula hoop should, right? It's going to just be not very mobile. The more effective way to, hula hoop with another person is to have two independent hula hoops that both can rotate around the same axis, and they can coexist around this same axis and operate as a hula hoop. They're there together, but they're independent circles, right? So this idea of being able to think about how you go out and create relationship with another or with something else. Is it someone or something that fulfills you? So in that context that I was talking to you about with the woman who insulted me, did I need her to validate my branding? No. I needed to let her know who I am, because she clearly didn't understand what I could do for her business. But see, what we do is we walk around in the world and we ask people to tell us who we are through our communication, because we aren't really sure who we are as one whole circle. Now, if you do understand yourself as one, then what you end up with is the ability to create a relationship with somebody where you can create more together than you ever could alone. So now that I had you think about yourself as a hula hoop, I want you to think like this. You're one hula hoop. That's the number one. So if you imagine a circle, put the number one inside of it. That's one entity, one person. That's one whole you. Now here's me over here, and I'm one circle. Right? Put the number one in there. So now you have 1 plus 1. But when we come together and we both think of ourselves independently having our own circle, we create a third circle around us. That third circle is our relationship. And that circle also has a 1. So when we come together, 1 plus 1 equals 3. If you think of yourself being 100% energy, which I think of myself as being 100% energy, you're 100% energy. Our relationship is 100% energy. We have 300% energy together. So 1 plus 1 equals 3. Now, in case you're thinking, oh my gosh, this girl is totally wackadoodle. What the heck is she talking about? I'm giving you a concept for how to perceive yourself as the number one and how to think about yourself in relationship to other people, because here's the thing. If you have the ability to know yourself as one and you can see me as one, then you understand that we are different, that we have different perspectives, and then we're both allowed to be three-dimensional in the world, meaning one day I'm like this, another day I'm a different version of myself, but I'm still this one whole being. If, however, you don't have that perception of yourself and you're looking to me to validate you, then you're always going to need me to be this one particular way with you. So I can't move in three-dimensional space. I can only be one particular form of myself, which gets to be very annoying. Now, just to make this even more strange, I want you to just think very, very simply for a second. What if you could, let's imagine this person that you're dating, and you could only ever show up around them with your face turned to the right all the way so that your chin is touching your right shoulder, right? Your face has to always be turned to the right and your chin is facing your chin is hitting your shoulder. Every time you see this person, you have to stand just like that. That would be weird, right? Right? That's what it means to basically look for other people or other things to validate yourself as the number one. To validate yourself on your own as the number one is to understand who you are and what is different about you and why that matters to anybody else. When you can have that perception, when people aren't understanding you, they're not getting you, it's much easier for you to just come up with some new vocabulary to better communicate with these other people. But as long as you need their approval, you're always going to have to be in an argument with them about who they are. It is not your job to tell people who they are. It's their job to tell you who they are. So that was a very conceptual way to understand yourself as the number one, right? Really thinking about yourself as the hula hoop. I had I just did this speech a few weeks ago, and I had some women at my table say, be the hula hoop. Like they had picked it up as this like way to think about empowering themselves, to think of themselves as one, be the hula hoop. All right, well, that's a conceptual way to think about it. But now I want to give you a client example so that you can have a better, more real world example of what it is that I'm trying to say. I was coaching an executive woman who I was hired to help. She hired me independently of her organization because she really was struggling to show up confidently amongst within the boardroom and with some of the male peers that she has in other departments. She's very confident what she does and very good at what she does, but she was struggling with some communication challenges there. And so I was hired to help her with that. And one of the things that happened was I get to know quite a bit about their personal life as I'm working with people this closely. And she was in a relationship with a man for about 5 years who he was in politics, and they had worked together to help establish him in politics. And this was something she did in her spare time to help him get established. And she helped him from a strategy and messaging standpoint. She helped him with a whole bunch of campaigning things. But when they would be out in public, he was one of those very boisterous, center of the stage kind of personalities. And she would try to participate and be a part of that with him. And he would just always shut her down or ignore her, or never make her feel like she was included. And this was really, in some ways, the same thing that was happening in the boardroom and with this other peer. I mean, it was different because the relationships were different, but it was the similar pattern where she was basically saying, do you love me now? Do you validate who I am? Like that kind of way of communicating. Your ideas about who I am matter a lot to me. And the problem with that is when you are looking for someone that you love or looking for someone that you work with to tell you that you're okay, that I like you, you are giving over all of your power to them and saying that your opinion matters more than my own opinion of myself. And as she and I were working together to develop a vocabulary to define herself as the number one, to define the unique value that she brings to the world, to organizations, to the organization she worked for, to the community that business belonged within, right? We worked together to define those things for her. She started to understand, this is who I am. I don't need anybody else to tell me that who I am and what I do is valuable, because she now had a concept of herself as the number one. She had a vocabulary for how to talk to herself about who she was. She didn't need anybody else to let her know who she was because she was knowing it for herself. And this is something that we do when, you're really different, right? And your difference is clearly valuable, but how do you language that in a way that makes you personally feel like you don't need anyone else to validate you? You just want them to listen to what you're saying so that they can best move forward, right? You want them to take your advice, or you want them to include you in the situation. But you can never get to having those conversations as long as the way in which you're communicating or your emotional tone is asking somebody to complete your circle as the number one. So she left that guy and she started communicating differently within the corporate environment. And she started being included on more communications with people in other departments. She started having more space to communicate in the boardroom, meaning she wasn't getting so upset when somebody would come at her in a disrespectful tone. She would just let them be whoever she is with whatever stuff that they've got. And then she would just course correct. She'd just say, hey, I didn't mean to disrespect you. This is really what I meant. I want to work together with you on this. She wasn't upset by how they reacted to her, because they should react to her in the way in which they do, because she's brilliant and her ideas were just not in alignment with the ideas that they had, because she was an expert at what she does. All right. I hope that made sense. Usually when I'm doing this, I have some pictures and diagrams to show you. My whole point here is that to know yourself as uniquely valuable to an organization or to a group or to a community or anything, to understand how your differences are uniquely valuable, is to understand yourself as the number one, independent of a relationship, independent of a job, right? You have a knowledge of yourself before you create a relationship with others, and that gives you the confidence to not be upset when somebody tells you you're someone that you're not, but instead to be able to manage your communication and therefore their perception of who you are. All right. If you like this show, please rate and review us on iTunes. It will really help us get more people listening in. If you don't already, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Radically Distinct. Tweet with me on at Jenn Morgan Brand, and don't forget to join my text club so that you can get updates on the show every time we give something go live. Okay, and until next time, my name is Jenn Morgan, empowering you to be radically distinct.